Thank you very much, Mr. President. We thank the High Commissioner for her oral update. We share the High Commissioner's concerns regarding the grave human rights situation in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It has now been exactly 38 days since Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir went into total communications blackout. 38 days of unlimited license to the occupiers to kill, rape, torture and blind Kashmiris. Pre-5th August, OHCHR, in its report, Kashmir Reports, have comprehensively documented the egregious human rights violations by Indian forces with full impunity under PSA and AFSPA. Now, with the cover of information blackout, we fear the worst. The clock is ticking. With more than 8 million Kashmiris incarcerated for more than 912 hours and counting, the humanitarian and human rights situation is grave. Kashmiris are desperate for food, medicines, access to medical services and other basic necessities. And then India circulates a note saying that everything is normal. If everything is normal, should we not go to Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir and check out for ourselves what the real situation on ground is? Mr. President, the curfew is draconian and absolute. BBC has reported that Kashmiris consider death a better option than inhuman and excruciating torture by the occupation forces. We need answers to why 6,000 young Kashmiri boys and girls can be abducted from their houses. Why was urologist Umar Salim taken into custody? His crime was simply to ask for medicines for his dying patients. Why was the entire Kashmiri political leadership put in jail? Who gave Indian Army permission to molest and rape women in house raids? Why is India stopping local authorities in IOK from issuing death certificates and registering cases of injured protesters? Who is responsible for serious injuries and deaths due to the use of illegal pellets? Why was 16-year-old Arifa Rubina, who was studying in her home yesterday, shot with pellet guns in Srinagar? India must answer to the concerns of the Council, the OHCHR, Special Procedures, civil society and most importantly the Kashmiris. India's knee-jerk response of attacking anyone who questions its state repression in IOK must be forcefully rebuked by the international community. The Council cannot be a bystander and let India continue its unrestrained repression. I thank you very much.
Mr. President, India holds the credentials of being the world's largest democracy. Our Constitution guarantees fundamental rights to all our citizens without distinction. Our independent judiciary, free media, vibrant civil society provides an effective framework for protection of human rights. My government is taking affirmative actions by adopting progressive policies to promote socio-economic equality and justice. As a result of recent legislative measures, these progressive policies will now be fully applicable to our citizens in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. These will end gender discrimination, better protect juvenile rights, and make applicable rights to education, information and work. The decisions were taken by our Parliament after a fully televised debate and enjoys widespread support. These were sovereign decisions entirely internal to India. No country can accept interference in its internal affairs, certainly not India. Despite challenging circumstances, Jammu and Kashmir's civil administration is ensuring basic services, essential supplies, mobility and connectivity. Democratic processes have been initiated, restrictions are being eased continuously, temporary preventive measures were needed to ensure security in the face of credible threats of cross-border terrorism. The world, in particular India, has suffered greatly on account of state-sponsored terrorism. It is time to collectively take decisive and firm action against terror groups who threaten fundamental right to life. We must speak out. Silence alone emboldens terrorists and their supporters. Mr. President, one delegation here has given a running commentary with offensive rhetoric of false allegations and concocted charges against my country. The world is aware that this fabricated narrative comes from the epicenter of global terrorism, where ringleaders are sheltered for years. This country conducts cross-border terrorism as a form of alternate diplomacy. National Register for Civil Rights is a statutory, transparent, non-discriminatory legal process mandated and monitored by the Supreme Court of India. Its implementation will comply with Indian laws. As a responsible member of the international community, India firmly believes in a constructive approach to promote and protect human rights. My full statement will be on the HRC internet. I thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are making this right of reply in response to India's right of reply. Obfuscation of facts and outright mendacity has become a tedious habit of the Indian delegation. Given the limited time, we will respond to only some of the gross inaccuracies in this statement. Jammu and Kashmir is not an Indian state, although India may desire that this should be the case. It is an internationally recognized disputed territory whose final disposition is to be decided through a UN-supervised plebiscite as mandated by numerous UN Security Council resolutions. This has been recently reaffirmed by the UN Secretary General's statement that the position of the United Nations is based on the UN Charter and the resolutions of the UN Security Council. All colonial powers have depicted the freedom struggles as terrorism. India is no different. It seeks to deny the legitimacy of Kashmiri freedom struggle by depicting it as terrorism. Numerous UN resolutions have recognized the legitimacy of people's struggle for self-determination against colonial and alien occupation. The Kashmiris' right to self-determination has been recognized in numerous UNSC resolutions. The long and widespread resistance of the Kashmiri people to the Indian occupation is an undeniable fact. This is why today the entire Kashmiri leadership is in jail, even those few who had mistakenly endeavored to collaborate with the Indian occupation authorities. This is why today there is a lockdown and curfew imposed over 8 million Kashmiris. That is why in the past few weeks alone, over 6,000 young persons have been detained and hundreds imprisoned and blinded by pellet guns. That is why an entire population is being held incommunicado, deprived of all communication links, unable to voice their anger at India's usurpation of their rights. That is why Amnesty International has been compelled to commence a campaign to lift the siege in occupied Kashmir. The OHCHR 2 Kashmir reports are a charge sheet against India. The OHCHR, special procedures, international media and civil society have all given a damning verdict against India for its crimes and atrocities. Not surprisingly, India has attacked anyone who has condemned its crimes. But India's credibility is in tatters. Indian assertions need to be fact-checked. We are amazed at the frequency of the assertion by India against anyone who questions its human rights record that they do not, and I quote, have a locus standi to do so. Human rights are universal, and their observance and implementation is a common responsibility of the whole United Nations. This simple and powerful truth cannot be wished away by the Indian delegation that is fully aware of its abysmal conduct in the Indian-occupied Kashmir. Moreover, Indian delegation will be given the list of around 60 countries that have raised their concerns on its human rights violations in Jammu and Kashmir. Don't worry, we will give you the list. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, I have been forced to take the floor to call out the blatant misrepresentation of facts and false narratives peddled by Pakistan in all its statements today. This is an ill-disguised effort to advance its territorial ambitions. We reject this propaganda. I wish to inform the Council that Article 370 was a temporary provision of the Indian Constitution. The recent modifications of Article 370 is within our sovereign right and entirely an internal matter of India. The decision removes impediments to the enjoyment of civil, political, social, economic and cultural rights of our citizens in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, especially those dealing with women, children and disadvantaged sections of our society in that region. Mr. President, we are not surprised at the Pakistan's hysterical statements with false, fabricated narratives aimed to politicize and polarize this forum. Pakistan realizes that our recent decision cuts the very ground from under its feet by creating obstacles in its continuing sponsorship of cross-border terrorism against India. In this desperate mind frame, some Pakistan leaders have even gone as far as to call for jihad and to encourage violence both inside Jammu and Kashmir and in third countries in order to paint a picture of genocide which even they know is far from reality. Pakistan has today pretended to speak as a voice of global community on human rights, but the world cannot be fooled. Pakistan's gory record speaks for itself. This rhetoric will not distract international attention from Pakistan's persecution and elimination of religious and ethnic minorities, be it Christians, Sikhs, Shias, Ahmadiyyas and Hindus. This is the reason that Pakistan no longer publishes official statistics about its minorities as India does. Blatant abuse of blasphemy laws in Pakistan to persecute minorities is well documented. Asia Bibi, the Christian woman, was incarcerated for years. So was Abdul Shakur, the 82-year-old Ahmadiyya, under Anti-Terrorism Act for selling books. The recent case of abduction, forced conversion and marriage of a minor Sikh girl, Jagjit Kaur, exemplifies the state of women, especially from the minority communities in Pakistan. And today, in this council, Pakistan has the audacity to tell others about human rights that it so egregiously violates again and again. Mr. President, as regards OIC, it has no locus standi to comment on the internal affairs of India. Jammu and Kashmir has been, is and shall continue to be an integral part of India. Pakistan's nefarious designs will never succeed because the people of Jammu and Kashmir are united in their determination to preserve our territorial integrity along with our core values of democracy, tolerance and unity and diversity. Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh will continue to progress and prosper along with the rest of India. It defies credibility that Pakistan, which is the epicenter of global terrorism, is claiming to speak on behalf of unnamed other countries on the issue of human rights. It forgets that terrorism is the worst form of human rights abuse. I thank you, Mr. President.